Welcome to Premium Times Weekly News Update Podcast. I am Titi Lokwe Fadari. Last week, we had Kozim Suleiman, who covers education and Independent National Electoral Commission for Premium Times, where he shared the outcome of the UTME exam, postponement of exam, and the timing for the release of the results. Today, I have with me Ame Ejekunyilo. He covers Judiciary for Premium Times. Ame, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
All right. So, Ame, so fill me in. What happened last week that you covered in the judiciary sector?
Notably, some of the cases that came up had to do with the rights violations, particularly the case of a private lawyer, and the Corporate Affairs Commission at the Federal High Court in Abuja regarding the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020, which borders on the rights of all Nigerians concerning the right to freedom of worship and association as enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution.
You are saying that this particular lawyer approached the court to indicate that the what they call CAMA Act, there are some certain provisions that are contravening the provisions of the Nigerian Constitution. Can you tell me more about which specific provisions, or what the provisions rather say, and what has been the development so far from this?
There are 8 sections in the CAMA, that's the Company and Allied Matters Act 2020, that are in conflict with the provisions of the Nigerian Constitution. And of course, the Nigerian Constitution supersedes every other piece of legislation in Nigeria. Therefore, any provision of any other law that contravenes the provisions of the Constitution will have to be struck down. And that was exactly what the court did by striking out 8 sections of the CAMA 2020. A lawyer based in Abuja, Emmanuel Ekpeyong, had filed a suit challenging the said provisions that gave extreme powers to, in his words, the Corporate Affairs Commission to regulate incorporated trustees. And then, of course, the incorporated trustees include associations, like charities, religious organizations, churches, and mosques, of course. And the powers are that for the Corporate Affairs Commission to regulate the activities of churches. Of course, this generated a lot of controversy in 2020 when President Buhari assented to the bill that was passed by the National Assembly. But it was challenged by the church, by CAN, at the Federal High Court, but on technical grounds, that particular suit was struck out. It was dismissed. But in this particular case that was filed in 2021 by Mr. Ekpeyong, he filed a suit as an individual, as a Nigerian, and as a lawyer practicing. And his grounds with the said provisions was that the law infringed on his right as a Catholic and then as a lawyer, because most organizations, charities and religious organizations would not want to register with the Corporate Affairs Commission owing to the said provisions of this CAMA Act that tend to regulate them by removing removing the trustees when there is a perceived dispute in the organization without recourse to the courts. And then the law also gives absolute powers to the Corporate Affairs Commission to have a kind of administrative committee that would sit over disputes, issues of dispute, probably mismanagement of such incorporated trustees, and then sit on its own and decide to remove the heads of such organizations, and then appoint someone else who is not a member of the organization. And that is clearly an infringement in the estimation of the plaintiff. And the court did agree with him that those provisions were, we are not in conformity with the provisions of the Constitution that gives Nigerians the right to freedom of thoughts, freedom of association, and the freedom to do business as it is in the case with charities. Of course, the non-governmental organizations provide essential services in terms of social services, and then they don't ask for government funding. So why should government be regulating them and then also ask them to also make returns? To report dormant accounts of such companies to the government. Okay. So the law also empowers the CAC to compel incorporated trustees to make returns to the government about dormant bank accounts of such organizations, which is beyond the powers of the government to go into private organizations and begin to inquire into their finances. So these are some of the issues that came up before the court, and the court agreed completely with with Mr. Ekpeyong, and those said provisions were struck down. So as it is, those provisions are no longer, and they no longer have the force of law, though they might be there in the books, but the Corporate Affairs Commission cannot enforce those provisions.
So let's move on to what you did this week. I understand that the former military head of state, Yakubu Gowon, made certain declaration during the week. Can you enlighten us more on what he said?
General Gowon did say litigants, particularly politicians who have filed petitions before the election petition tribunals, should allow the courts to do their work in terms of adjudicating on those complaints. Of course, the complaints arose from the conduct of the recent general elections in February and March, where the outcome is being challenged. Of course, up to the presidential level, the president-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu, his victory is being challenged at the presidential election petition court by the front runners who were Atiku Abubakar of the PDP and Peter Obi of the Labour Party. And of course, 3 other political parties are also challenging the outcome of the election. So he spoke against the backdrop of these complaints at the tribunal, urging them to allow the courts, particularly the Supreme Court, to determine these petitions and Nigerians to abide by the outcome of their decisions on these petitions. Because lately the Supreme Court was criticized for some of its judgments that were considered to be unpopular and did not address the issue of substantial justice. Okay. Which, for instance, Justice Adibe was revered for standing up for. He said he was always on the side of substantial justice than the issue of technicalities. And that was on that background that he made the call that Nigerians and, of course, litigants should allow the judiciary to do its work, and they should abide by the judgments of the courts.
Okay, so I think basically from the build-up of what has happened this week, what are we looking forward to next week in the judiciary sector?
Well, next week will be a beehive of activities, particularly at the Presidential Election Court and the Court of Appeal in Abuja.
Okay.
The Presidential Election Court will begin its first sitting on Monday.
Okay.
At 8th May, on the 8th of May.
Okay.
Where it will have its pre-session hearing. And of course, it will be sort of the inaugural sitting where the panel of 5 justices, and most likely the panel will be presided by the president of the Court of Appeal.
Okay.
Justice Monica Dongban Mensen.
Okay.
And of course, four justices of the court. However, the membership of the panel has not been officially disclosed, but it has been the tradition of the court to appoint the most senior justices who will preside over the proceedings. But unlike in 2019, where the former president of the Court of Appeal, Justice Bukachua, recused herself, withdrew from presiding over the panel over allegations of bias, that she might be biased, as raised by Atiku Abubakar then, owing to the president's, the Court of Appeal then president's relationship with probably politicians on account of her husband, who is a politician.
Sorry, before you continue, do you think that is one of the reasons why there's a delay in releasing the names of persons that will constitute the membership of this particular panel?
Well, I don't think that's the case, because the judiciary is a very conservative sector.
Okay.
Particularly in Nigeria, and it's been it's been quite difficult to get very vital information regarding the activities of the Presidential Election Petition Court. Of course, the registry is supposed to make all of this information readily available to journalists, but that has not been the case. It's been quite difficult. Even as I speak, there hasn't been any official communication from the court saying there will be proceedings on Monday. We only rely on lawyers to parties in the petitions to tell us about probably hearing notices that have been issued to them to appear before the tribunal and then represent their clients.
But why is this so? Why is it so that journalists are not given information about a situation that they feel is very vital to the country?
Well, this has always been a concern over the years, particularly for a matter as important as this, a matter of national importance, where every Nigerian will be hooked onto the various media platforms to get reliable information as to the proceedings of the court, and then given the background of issues around delays in hearing and determining these petitions before the inauguration on May 29, the court ought to have made all of these things available. But unfortunately, that has not been the case, and there can be no cogent reasons for all of this secrecy around the membership of the panel not being disclosed, and all of this. It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. There can be no justification for it.
All right. So, but which presidential candidates have already you already see will be presenting a case in court?
Well, of course, the candidates of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, and the Labour Party presidential candidate, Peter Obi, their cases, owing to their outing at the election, should top the list of cases to be heard on Monday. However, from sources within the court, most likely it will be the case of the PDP against the APC. Of course, Atiku's case against Mr. Tinubu, that will first be heard on Monday, and then other cases will follow.
Okay. Is it like a duration on how long this tribunal sitting will go on? Or
Of course, there is a time. The proceedings the proceedings are time bound. The court has 180 days to hear and determine all the petitions that are before it. Of course, the 180 days starts from the first court of instance, which is the Court of Appeal.
Okay.
The Presidential Election Petition Court and the Court of Appeal will have to hear the matter and then determine it within reasonable time to ensure that those who might be dissatisfied with the outcome at the lower court, that's at the Court of Appeal, will have the opportunity to appeal to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court will also have to determine that from the time it was filed. Of course, these petitions were filed from 15th up till 20th of March. So the time starts running from the date from 1st March when Mr. Tinubu was declared as Nigeria's president-elect.
Okay.
So the time the time started running from March 1st. So we have 180 days from March 1st for these petitions to be determined. But obviously, it cannot be determined before the inauguration on May 29. There is no magic about that.
All right. So, I would definitely have to bring you again to discuss more before the end of the life of the election tribunal, to give us some more updates on what has happened thus far. Well, I think I foresee a very busy week for you. Hopefully, if it starts, the tribunal sitting starts this week.
Absolutely, it's going to be a very hectic day owing to the technicalities that are involved in judicial reporting. But we are all equal to the task.
Yes, definitely. I trust that. Thank you so much for joining me to have this conversation.
It's a privilege to be on this show. Thank you.
Do not forget, if you like this podcast, please share and favorite, and also visit www.premiumtimesng.com to catch the latest edition of this podcast series. I remain your host, Titi Lokwe Fadare. See you next week.